Washington takes down Oregon to win the last ever Pac-12 championship. Yeah, Michael Penix, they wrote y'all off, but y'all didn't write back. Y'all talked with y'all pads tonight. And like I said at the start of the week, the Huskies were being severely disrespected and underestimated going into this game. They were a 9.5-point underdog against a team that they already beat the first time they played this season. But yet, everybody made all the excuses in the world for why Oregon lost that first matchup. Dan Lanning was too aggressive on fourth downs, despite the fact that the Huskies defense stopped them all 3 times that they went for it in those fourth down situations. Nobody gave that offense any credit for Michael Penix leading them downfield for the game-sealing touchdown to win that game. And then after Washington, they were barely skating by in their wins, winning ugly against Arizona State, one of the worst teams in college football, barely beating Utah, a team that Oregon destroyed, and barely getting past Washington State with the W in the Apple Cup. But you want to know the number one thing that people overlooked about Washington in this game? While Oregon was dominating teams with style points, Washington has been one of the best teams in college football this season because of their ability to win games, rather if it be via a blowout or via a late game-winning field goal with only a few seconds left in the fourth quarter. The best teams in college football can find ways to win, even if they're not playing their best football. They can win ugly. They have something that I like to call the trapdoor ability. When anytime their back is against the wall in the fourth quarter, when palms get sweaty and they need a big play to keep them alive to eventually win the game, they come through. You see Washington this season, all year long, they've elevated their play in the fourth quarter. That's when they played their best football. When Oregon was going on their run in the third quarter and it looked like they took all the momentum in this game, Washington, what did they do in the fourth quarter? They made more plays than what Oregon did. And it's funny how people were criticizing Washington winning their games against inferior opponents in close fashion, but yet they won this game the same way that they've won the majority of games that they've won this year. They only won this game by 3 points. The final score was 34-31. And people were saying that Oregon was the more talented team because they were more dominant in their victories, but they were overlooking just truly how talented this Washington team was. You can't just judge a team strictly based on point differential and style points. Washington's offense is just as good as what Oregon's offense was going into this game. Both of these teams had Heisman contenders at quarterback in Michael Penix and Bo Nix, who both played outstanding games. They both had 2 of the best offensive lines in college football. Yeah, Oregon's defense may have looked more talented on paper, but what people failed to give the Huskies credit for is that their defense has played some of their best football over the last month. And the biggest thing that really had me blowed is that people are saying Oregon is not just a more superiorly talented team, but they're a more physical team than Washington. Well, Washington looked like the more physical team tonight. They outgained Oregon on the ground 157 yards to 124. And the majority of Oregon's rushing yards came off that 44-yard run by Bo Nix. Bucky Irving has been one of the best running backs in college football this year. He's looked damn near unstoppable. But in this game, he barely had any daylight. Meanwhile, Dylan Johnson was the star player in this game for the Huskies. He had 152 rushing yards, 5.4 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. And people looked at Washington statistically and looked at the rushing yards per game metric, and they say Washington isn't a good running team when that's not true. If you watch Washington play all season long, you will know that they have been able to run the football. It's just that they don't care about running the football, because why run the ball when you have 3 NFL caliber wide receivers in the Donze, Jalen McMillan, and Jalen Polk? And that was a large reason why I picked Washington to win this game, because I felt that their offense was way too talented for Oregon's defense to be able to slow it down. Do you know how deep you have to be in your secondary to shut down an offense that has 3 NFL caliber wide receivers, 2 of them which could be first-round picks? You got to be really deep in the secondary, and Oregon's secondary isn't that talented. And Oregon's defensive line was going up against an offensive line that was one of the best in college football. You see, people got drawn into the whole point differential and style point narrative. That's why many people picked Oregon not just to win this game, but to cover. There were people in the comment section telling me, man, there's a reason why Vegas is normally right most of the time. There's a reason why people bet on these things, because Vegas isn't always right, and they got it wrong tonight. And a lot of people got this game wrong also because they underestimated the true heart of a champion. You got to play your best football in the fourth quarter. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And oftentimes this season, Washington has gotten out the slow starts. But in this game, they started out like a bat out of hell. Once they went up 20-3, I knew they were going to cover. I knew they were going to cover right when that point spread came out, and they were a 9.5-point underdog. I jumped on that thing so fast, and I told all my homies, hey, y'all trying to win some free money this week? Take Washington plus 9.5, because people are really sleeping on these boys. We got to stop judging teams based off point differential. That's only one metric that you can use to determine just how good a team is. You overlook that Washington is really well coached. Kalen DeBoer has done a fantastic job with the Washington program, where things looked really dark when Jimmy Lake got fired. You didn't know if you were ever going to get back to the same level that you were under your previous head coach before Jimmy Lake and Chris Peterson. And then Kalen DeBoer comes in, and year one last season, you have a lot of success. And year two, you win the conference. And I picked Washington to win this game, not just because I felt like they were just as good as Oregon and they were being counted out, but also if you go and you check my preseason predictions, I picked Washington to win the Pac-12 this season when it wasn't a popular pick. The two teams that most people picked to win the Pac-12 this season was either Oregon or USC. You see, Washington is one of those teams that when you watch them play, the fact that they win ugly and it's not as convincing as Oregon can kind of fool you. But like Kalen DeBoer said at the start of this game, they played their best football when the lights are the brightest. And what makes Washington one of college football's elite teams this season has been their ability to win, rather if it be ugly or if they win via beating your ass by 3 or 4 touchdowns. Michael Penix, he had an outstanding performance in this game. And Bo Nix, he played well also. He had a costly mistake that hurt him. So did Michael Penix, but the difference is that Washington, they've been here before. They're not new to this. They're true to this. And this is the kind of way that they've won games all season long. You see, it's ironic that people were knocking Washington for the way that they win games, and they won this game the same way that they've won the others. Isn't that crazy? They beat Washington State by 3 points, and they won the Pac-12 title by only 3 points, 34-31. And when you look at them going into the college football playoffs, because there's no way that they're not going to get in, they're undefeated. This is a team that is good enough to beat anybody as long as they're able to start out fast. If they got to play Michigan or Georgia in the first round, they can't afford to get out to a slow start. They got to come out firing on all cylinders like how they did at the start of this game. The only way Washington's offense wasn't able to score in this game was with self-inflicted errors. When this team is at its best and everybody's playing at their best level or their highest level, this is one of the best teams in college football, and they're really tough to beat with how deep they are at wide receiver and how talented Michael Penix is as a passer. And when you got an offensive line this big and this physical, and you got the ability to run the football, not because you have to, but whenever you want to, that shows you how dominant you are on offense. There's not too many teams in college football that have the kind of talent on the secondary to slow down this passing attack. The only way this passing attack gets slows down is when they get out of rhythm. And we've seen Michael Penix have some slow starts. He started out slow against Oregon State somewhat. But he's one of those players that as the game goes on, he gets better and better. And when the fourth quarter comes around, this dude plays tremendous football. Washington is a tremendous fourth quarter team. They win exactly similar to the way that the Philadelphia Eagles do. If you watch the NFL, you see the Philadelphia Eagles, they play crappy the first half, and then in the third and fourth quarter, they elevate their game to a different level, and they look like a Super Bowl caliber football team. Same thing with Washington. They don't play their best the first couple of quarters, but when the game is on the line in the fourth, best believe you're going to get everything that they got. And like I said, this team was being underestimated. I don't get why they were a 9.5-point underdog when Oregon wasn't a more superiorly talented team. And people overlooked the fact that Washington beat this team. It wasn't a fluke. They stopped them 3 times when they went for it on fourth down. How was that a fluke? I mean, Dan Lanning's coaching decisions lost that game, but doesn't that mean that he got outcoached by Kellen DeBoer? Shoot, he got outcoached again tonight. Oregon, they started out slow. They got back into this game, but they weren't ready for the physicality and the intensity that Washington came out with in this game. Congratulations on Washington for being the final Pac-12 champion in this conference history. And I'm really sad that this conference is finna be history once this season concludes, because this has been my favorite conference to watch this season. I love watching Pac-12 after dark. I loved all of the entertaining matchups that we've gotten within this conference. I love the storylines that we had. You got a team in Oregon that's dominating everybody. And then you got a team against Washington that just finds ways to win. And then you got other teams like Colorado with the whole Deion Sanders experiment starting out 3-0. You were tuned in to see how is it all going to play out. You had Oregon State, who just lost their head coach to Michigan State, who's been a revelation the last 2 seasons. UCLA, USC, like there's been so much great football played in this conference. And it's sad that this is the last time that we're ever going to see Pac-12 football played again. But congratulations to the Huskies for winning the last ever Pac-12 title. Let me know your thoughts on this game down in the comment section down below. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Check out the JT Sports Podcast. Remember that every episode of the podcast that's uploaded on the channel is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available.